everybody, and welcome to another book stream. Tonight we are reading chapter 26 called The End of All Magic. But in the last chapter, chapter 25, it was called One Voice Out of Many, and Halia and Merlin made their way through this crystal cave and found the Wheel of Way and the oracles, and Merlin deciphered that there isn't just one voice of truth, but instead it's all of the voices together, combined, make the truth. And he got to ask his one question, and he asked, where is the Galator? Because he needs it to defeat Valdirg, the dragon, who is ravaging the lands. And all at once, as soon as the oracle was about to answer, a Krelix attacked, and Bakhod, the old innkeeper, walked into the cave. And that is where we are at. So, this is chapter 26, The End of All Magic. Are ye looking for something, me dears? We whirled around to see an old man standing behind us in the entry to the chamber. Bakhod. The glowing crystals around him shone no less than his eyes. For this Bakhod looked altogether different from the haggard waiter of the tavern. He stood perfectly straight, his arms folded upon his chest, watching us in the way an owl observes its prey before swooping down to crush its skull. Yet I couldn't mistake his crackling voice, limp mustache, and white hair that brushed the shoulders of his robe. Crouching by his side, ready to spring at an instant's notice, rested another Krelix. Even with its wings folded on its back, its massive body filled much of the passageway. As it opened its blood-red mouth, bearing its 3 deadly fangs, Hallie and I shrank back. I nearly tripped over one of the piles of bones. Bakhod smirked. I'm so sorry your little conversation with the turd and wheel never finished, me dears. Me furred companion, you see, just couldn't stop itself in time. You needn't worry, though. It won't be bothering ye any more. You stopped it, I cried. Ended its magic. Just when it was going to tell me where to find. I caught myself before saying more. Bakhod shook his head, swaying his white locks. Mayhaps I can help ye, me lad. Save ye some time and trouble. He reached into the folds of his robe. With a flourish, he pulled forth a pendant on a leather cord. Its jeweled center flashed with a stunning green radiance. The Galator! I started toward him, when the Krelix's vicious snarl stopped me. How did you get it? I stole it, answered Bakhod with pride. With some help from a cunning friend of mine. My cheeks burned. You mean Rita Gower? His dark eyes glinted with satisfaction. He taught me about Negatus Mysterium, ye see, and how to breed and train the Krelixes to do our work. And what work is that? Demanded Halia, her voice shaking with rage. The work of destroying magic. Bakhod tossed the glowing pendant into the air. It twirled, sparkling, then fell back into his hand. Gripping it tightly, he sneered. Magic's the plague of this island, always has been. Whether from wizards or pendants or oracles like this turning wheel, it's all evil and dangerous, and worst of all, against nature. He turned to the Krelix crouching beside him. That's why these beasts are so useful. For destroying the plague. With a glance at me, he chortled. Or them who spread it, like young wizards. I almost grabbed a bone from the floor and threw it at him. So you were the one who tried to kill me. Twice, yes, our beasts tracked you down. You may have escaped those times, but never again. He tugged on his sagging mustache. Me friend, the one ye mentioned, seems to be feeling a bit angry with ye. My boot ground into the crystals on the floor, as I am with him. That's your concern, not mine. My own concern is magic. Nothing less than the end of all magic, me dears, can bring lasting peace to this island. And that's the work of us who understands. Us who understands, I repeated scornfully. With his free hand, Bacchod drew a curved sword from his belt. The blade glinted in the light of the crystals. Seeing it, my heart thundered, for at the base of the blade, burned in black, was an emblem of a fist crushing a lightning bolt. Clan Righteous? Yes, me lad, there's only 3 of us. 2 being up on the cliffs right now, tendin' to the Creelixes, but ye can expect more precious soon. He smiled grimly. Precious soon. For when the word gets out that we're freeing the land from magic, most of Finkyra will rise up to join us. You're wrong, I declared. About Finkyra, and about magic, too. Magic is a tool, no different from a sword or a hammer or a cooking pot, except that its powers are greater. And like any other tool, it can be misused. But whether it's ultimately good or evil, well, that depends on the person who wields it. Halia nodded. And don't think wizards are the only ones with magic. No, it lives in quiet places too, from the hollow log of a tiny light flyer to the meadow grazed by deer people. Her eyes seemed to sizzle. You have no right to destroy all that, and so much more. Bacchod grimaced. I've every right, you see? And when Rita Gower and I are finished, Finkyra will have no magic left. No, I glared at him. It will have no defenders left. Don't you see? You've been duped, old man. Rita Gower is just using you. That's right, to help him wipe out all those who might have any power to stand against him. He waved his hand contemptuously. Magic has twisted your mind. It's true, I protested. Listen, Rita Gower could just walk in and declare this world his own if there was no wizards, no Galators, no... I caught myself. No dragons. I glanced at Bacchod's boots, knowing that his heels would show slashes from the sharp stones of his floor, just as Aramon had predicted. It was you, wasn't it, who killed the young dragons? Bacchod smirked. Of course, me dears. I hadn't planned on waking up their father just yet, but it's just as well. Having him burn a few towns will remind people about the plague. He studied his sword, flashing in the light of the crystals. Valdirg's time will be coming soon enough, just as yours will, and your friend, the bard, a few minutes from now, when I meet him for a little, stroll up the cliffs. His smirk broadens. He thinks he's been learning about the Creelixes from me, you see. That he has, me dears, but just a little bit. All the while I've been learning more from him, much more. He told me plenty already about the hiding places of magic. With that, he grabbed the cord of the Galator, allowing the pendant to swing freely. Sparks of radiant green reflected on the walls of the chamber, dancing with the silvery glow of the crystals. Bacchod's grin broadened. But first, me dears, ye get to watch me destroy this wicked thing. He clucked in anticipation. I've been so waitful for the right moment, and I do believe it's now, with ye both as me audience. No, I cried, you can't. The Galator is as old as Finkyra itself, pleaded Halia. Bacchod had already begun uttering a command to the Creelix. The beast's pointed ears stiffened and its shoulders tensed. The dagger-like claws raked against the floor of the cavern. It turned to the Galator, luminous and mysterious, and exposed its fangs. Now ye shall see true power, promised the white-haired man, swinging the pendant. The power of Negatus Mysterium. He chortled softly. Watch me, dears, as this green glow dies forever. Just as he started to utter the final command to the Creelix, I leaped at him. The Creelix screeched, sending a blaze of scarlet light rebounding off the walls of my mind as well as the cavern. Simultaneously, Bacchod toppled over backward. The Galator flew through the air, landing somewhere near the motionless wheel. Even as I fell to the floor, Halia, springing like a deer, was at my side. Before we could press the attack, however, the Creelix swatted at us with an enormous bat-like wing. We hurtled into the crystal-covered wall. Sharp facets tore our legs and gouged our backs before we rolled to a halt. Barely had we regained our feet when a sudden tremor jolted the chamber, knocking us down again. Several crystals on the ceiling flickered, then exploded, showering the wheel with flaming embers. At the same time, a second tremor rocked the chamber. A great chunk of black rock broke loose from the ceiling, smashing into the crystalline floor only an arm's length from my head. The wheel itself shuddered and creaked on the axis, fell away completely. The whole structure tilted forward, tottering precariously on its rim. Backod struggled to his feet, then kicked the Krelix in the side. It snarled, but didn't lash out. "Ye foolish beasts! Your power struck the crystals instead, and who knows what could—" The wheel of way crashed to the floor. Spokes and rims shattered, sailing in all directions. More crystals exploded overhead. Jagged cracks snaked across the walls of the chamber. Then, vents of steam burst open, hissing and snapping. Hotter grew the air, and hotter still. A sly grin on his face, Backod mounted the back of the Krelix. "So you want the Galator, me dears? Well, it's yours forevermore. See how long its magic keeps ye safe now." The Krelix spread its wings, flapped, and shot into the passageway. At the same instant, another section of the ceiling broke loose. With a burst of sparks, it landed on the remains of the wheel. Flames leaped, blazing with a fury I had not seen since the fire that had cost me my eyes. I turned to Halia, even as the wall behind us cracked and buckled, spraying us with chips of stone. Then, to my horror, a sizzling orange liquid, brighter than the flames around us, started bubbling out of the cracks. Lava. "Go!" I commanded. "You can still escape in time to warn Cairpri. Run like a deer." She glanced up at the crumbling walls. "What about you?" "The Galator. I've got to find it before—" The wall arched over us, shifted, groaning like a dying beast. A spurt of lava erupted from a crack. "Before it's lost for all time." Halia seized my arm. "You'll be lost for all time if you don't flee now." I pulled free. "I, too, can run like a deer, remember? Please, Halia, I'll be right behind you." Her brown eyes, glowing like a light as rich and unfathomable as the Galator's, studied me. "All right, but be quick. Even a deer can't run through lava." "Then, if I have to, I'll fly. Yes, like a young hawk." She grinned fleetingly, even as she leaped to her feet. Dodging a patch of flaming, sputtering crystals, she dashed for the door. She melted into a tan-colored streak that bounded, hooves pounding, down the passage. Hastily, I sprang to the spot where the Galator had fallen. A spark struck the back of my neck, burning my skin. I brushed it away, just as a flume of fire erupted by my boot, scorching my leg. Blood from the crystal's scraping dripped down my forearm. Yet none of this mattered. Only the Galator mattered. Plunging into the wreckage, I leaped over a smoldering crystal. Wildly, I turned over every piece of fallen stone I could find, searching for the pendant. Then I realized that a broken fragment of the wheel's rim now covered the place where it had fallen. Planting my boots, I tried my hardest to lift the fragment. It wouldn't budge. Again, I braced. Again, I lifted. The piece shifted only slightly before slipping out of my grasp. A new segment of the ceiling toppled, crashing on the very spot where Hallie and I had been just a moment before. Crystals sprayed across the floor. More rumbling shook the collapsing walls. The heat was so stifling I could barely breathe. I planted my feet at a different angle, hoping for better leverage. Wrapping my fingers around the heavy fragment, I pulled and pulled. My legs shook, my back strained. My head felt as if it would burst. At last, the piece lifted, ever so slightly. With a final groan, I shoved it aside. Not there. I raised my arms, cursing. Where else could the Galator be? At that instant, an enormous crack slashed out across the floor under my feet. Sulphurous smoke belched out. As I leaped aside, the ceiling exploded in a new storm of sparks. Then, to my horror, I spotted a gargantuan slab of rock working loose above the entry to the chamber. I hesitated, scanning the floor one last time, then threw myself into the passage. Rolling over the crystals, I turned for a final glance at the crumbling walls. Suddenly, I saw a flash of green at the far end of the chamber. The Galator. I started to plunge back in again when the enormous slab tore loose. It smashed to the floor, sealing the opening. A curtain of molten lava flowed over it. I reeled as if the slab had fallen on top of me. Gone. The Galator was gone. My eyes clouding, I started to stumble down the smoke-filled passageway. Another tremor, more violent than the rest, rocked the cliffs. Vents split open, gushing superheated steam. I pitched to the side, slamming into the wall. A deer. I must run like a deer. With all my remaining strength, I tried to run, to become a deer before it was too late. Nothing happened. I ran harder, my lungs screaming. Nothing happened. The power, it had vanished. By the new depth of emptiness in my chest, I knew that Aramon's gift had at last abandoned me. He had warned me that it would run out unexpectedly. But why now? A row of flaming crystals from the roof of the passageway split open, raining sparks and jagged chips on my head. Another section of wall erupted as I passed. I stumbled forward, my head rattled no less than the rocks. All of a sudden, the floor buckled beneath me, knocking me sprawling. I lay there, face down on the crystals. Though they jabbed and singed my skin, I felt too weak to rise. I could not run like a deer. I could not even run like a man. Here I would die, buried in the lava along with the Galator. Okay, my friends, that is the end of chapter 26. So tomorrow we will read chapter 27, called Very Near. I hope you have a wonderful night and you join me tomorrow. Thank you all. Bye.